A bad sell-off indeed on Wall Street today. Trading actually halted this morning when the broader market plunged 7%, triggering a circuit breaker. And things, they didn't get any better once trading resumed, with the Dow diving more than 2,000 points, its largest point drop in history. The nearly 8% plunge, the worst day for stocks since 2008. An absolute collapse in crude oil prices, they helped to fuel the sell-off, and that has a major ripple effect on countless companies that employ millions of Americans in the energy sector. It's huge. When oil price drops, massive companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, they suffer, but so do scores of small and mid-sized companies that do oil service and other functions, and the banks are taking a hurt. Those that invest in and lend to the energy firms' only silver lining is that there is a drop in gas prices. Also, the VIX, or the fear gauge, it just jumped to its highest level since the financial crisis. And it measures volatility, and we have seen a tremendous amount of that over the past couple weeks. On Wednesday, top Wall Street executives, they are set to meet with the president at the White House to discuss the response to the outbreak. There are critics who are saying, what took so long, and is there a plan? Joining me now, Jared Bernstein. He, Vice President Joe Biden's chief economist, now a senior fellow at the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. Jared, as always, I appreciate you making time for us. I know the president sent out a tweet. This is a great thing that the oil prices are down, but they're down because demand is down globally here. And that has consequences you can far better articulate than me. There's a cascading impact, not just on the travel and the service industries. We're starting to feel it in all different areas, aren't we?
Right. So initially it was a demand problem, as you correctly pointed out. You know, when people stop taking trips, when they stop driving, when they stop flying, when they reduce their consumption of energy, of course, that's going to put downward pressure on the price through the demand side. But today we also got a bit of a supply shock because the Saudis and Russia are having a big argument about controlling the price of oil, and the Saudis announced that they're going to be unleashing greater supply, further pushing the price down. So you've really got a double bear market in oil. And I think the key thing for Americans to recognize is that there was a time when low oil prices, because oil was an input to the economy that was almost exclusively imported from other countries, when low oil prices were a plus for the economy. That time is long gone. We are now a net exporter of energy. And so many companies take a very significant hit when this occurs.
Jared, there's a lot of people watching tonight that have 401ks that obviously were shaken by what happened today and really what's happened the past couple of weeks. Do you have any expectation that the yo-yo we've seen here is just going to keep continuing, or more than that, there's not a belief that we're near bottom yet?
Well, first of all, if you can avoid it, try not to look at your 401k, because it is such a yo-yo and such a difficult time for people. I think the ones who are most exposed to this, of course, are people who are living on fixed incomes or on the returns from their savings that might be in the stock market. And of course, with fixed income kinds of accounts, interest rates are so low. So there's not much relief there either. Look, nobody can possibly tell you what the stock market is going to do from day to day. And that fear index, by the way, it's actually called a volatility index, meaning it's pushed up both by big ups and big downs. And we have a couple of days when traders decided that the sell-off in the previous day was too extensive, and they got in and they did some buying. I guess what I can tell you with considerable confidence is that the underlying economy, what we often refer to as the real economy, jobs, incomes, the kinds of commodity prices, things that you can look at and touch and go to work and draw your paycheck, those remain in considerable stress because of what's going on both, as we said earlier, the demand side and the supply side of the economy. And that's what's so damaging about the coronavirus, is that it's hurt global supply chains. It's kept people from getting to work. The quarantines might mean that if your kid is home from school, you have to stay home with them. And if you're someone who doesn't have paid leave, you could be talking about people who don't get a paycheck for a couple of weeks, oftentimes people with no savings. That stuff is all very real. I'm not discounting the downs in the market, especially a day like today. It's huge, obviously. I'm saying those kinds of up and downs will happen, but the underlying economic stress, I see that as ongoing.
And so much of our economy is face to face here. And I think people are coming to it. And there's also another economic realization the president's got to face, whether he likes it or not. This belief that we can be as nationalistic as possible and somehow wall out the world from us. It doesn't work that way in a globalized economy. Now, on Wednesday, Jared, he's going to be meeting with a lot of the senior banking folks in this country. And I don't know what's worse, that it's taken this long to get together and to talk about where the plan is, or that there is a plan. I wonder where it's going to go. We hear there could be some bailout for folks in the transportation, or I guess in some of the service industries impacted by this. But I have no confidence that there is some fully formed idea, given the rantings he does at the Fed when they've got literally no more ammo to work with right now. That to me would be a bigger fear than even the meeting itself if there's not a plan.
I share your concern about this. So I don't see what particularly useful comes from the president sitting around with a bunch of Wall Street executives. Maybe I'm missing something, but I suspect if anything, they're going to be looking to him and say, what are you planning to do about this? And by that, I suspect they'll be asking on two fronts. On the health front, and what kinds of measures can we take to do our best to contain the spread and to help people who have been affected by the virus, A, and B, all this economic fallout we've been talking about. And here, again, the president and his staff, their time would be much better spent coming up with a very quick fiscal response to the impact of the coronavirus on the economy than virtually anything else outside of the health thing I just mentioned that they could be doing. The Fed is already on the case. They've lowered rates significantly, and that's going to help a little bit, but pretty much at the margins, because all the things we've been talking about, from the demand shock, the supply shock, the people who might not be getting paychecks. At this point, what has to happen is an aggressive and targeted fiscal response from the federal government. To not do so would be political malpractice. Now, one positive in that regard is that interest rates are so remarkably low that borrowing, and this is going to have to be deficit finance, is very cheap. So the question becomes, what can you do to help people the most? I think helping states who are soon going to start facing real fiscal constraints is important. I think making sure the folks that I talked about earlier have some sort of guaranteed paid leave. I think direct checks to households, as we did in 2008 under Bush 2, would also be useful. But those measures, even if you do them really quickly, they take months to get out. Now, maybe we could make those months weeks. That would be time well spent. But sitting around talking to a bunch of Wall Street execs, I got to say, I don't see what good comes out of that.
And again, that meeting Wednesday. Jared, thank you as always for the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Now, what's happening on Wall Street, obviously scary. So is the situation at our country's hospitals. Not yet potentially, though, in the very near future as this virus spreads. A Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter from The Times will join us to discuss the impact of the virus on our healthcare system and whether or not we can keep up with the soon demand.